Everyone saw the blood on her sleeve, but no one asked why. It was the kind of image that burns into your memory and never leaves. The kitchen tiles slick with something that didn't belong there. Her hair spread out like a dark halo against the cold floor. And that arm, twisted in a way no human arm should ever bend. I froze at the doorway. My body locked up, like some part of me refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. For a split second, I thought maybe Emma had slipped. Maybe she'd tripped on the rug. Maybe this was just a freak accident. But then she turned her head. And the look in her eyes, half pain, half raw terror, told me everything I didn't want to know. Dave. Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. They came for me. My knees gave out before I even realized I was moving. I was on the floor, pulling her close, feeling her body trembling like a leaf in a storm. She was clammy, cold, sweat soaking through her blouse. Her right arm lay at an angle so wrong it made my stomach twist. What happened? Who did this? My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded hollow. And then I saw it. On the floor, next to the shattered pieces of her phone, lay something that didn't belong in our home. A badge. Not a police badge, not city enforcement, but something trying really hard to look official. HOA Compliance Division. Only, there is no HOA Compliance Division. That was the moment the truth slammed into me like a freight train. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't random. Someone had walked into my home, wearing the face of authority, and broken my wife's arm like it was nothing more than a dry twig. Her breathing hitched as she tried to sit up. I held her still, whispering, "Don't move. Just don't move." But she wasn't thinking about herself. "They warned me," she gasped out, biting back a sob. "They said to stop. The blog. Stop digging." Her lips trembled, her words coming in short, ragged bursts. Said I violated community harmony, whatever the hell that means. Community harmony. That phrase clanged in my head like an iron bell. It sounded too neat, too rehearsed, like something someone cooked up in a boardroom to make intimidation. Sound polite. But none of it mattered right then. The only thing that mattered was the swelling already spreading under her skin, the pale cast of her face, the pain clouding those sharp green eyes I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. Scooped her up in my arms, God, she felt so light, and carried her out the door. My truck roared to life like it understood the urgency pulsing through my veins. The whole drive to the ER, my hands gripped the wheel so hard they ached. Emma whimpered every time the tires hit a bump, and each sound was a blade slicing deeper into me. I kept glancing at her, at the way she was biting her lip so hard she'd drawn blood, refusing to scream. Because that's who Emma is, tough, unbreakable. Or at least, she was, until tonight. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. The ER doors slid open, and people in scrubs swarmed us. Questions, clipboards, the bright glare of fluorescent lights. They wheeled her away, and I was left standing there with her blood on my hands and a hollow echo in my chest where my heart should have been. The doctor's words were just confirmation of what I already knew. "This was deliberate," he said quietly, showing me the X-ray like it was some kind of grotesque art piece. "Clean break. Twisted first, then snapped. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." I think that was the moment the anger started. Slow at first, like a fire catching on damp wood. But it spread fast, burning away the shock until all that was left was heat. Someone had walked into my home, pretending to be official, pretending to have authority, and they'd done this to the woman I love. I stepped out into the hallway because I couldn't breathe inside that sterile little room anymore. My fists clenched and unclenched, the sound of my pulse roaring in my ears. And that's when the memories started coming back. The board meetings, the smug smile on Diane Blackwood's face every time Emma asked a question she didn't want to answer, the sudden 400% jump in HOA fees that no one could explain. 400%. From $200 a month to $800. For what? Landscaping? Flower beds? I'm a construction engineer. I know what a flower bed costs. And it sure as hell isn't $3.8 million. Emma knew it too. That's why she started digging. It's what she does. What made her such a damn good prosecutor before she left the DA's office. She can smell a lie from a mile away, and Diane's HOA meetings reeked of it. Emma started asking questions, public ones, on her blog, the one with 500,000 followers. At first it was just numbers that didn't make sense. Then it was shell companies. Names like Meadowbrook Community Enhancement Solutions and Suburban Infrastructure Development Associates. Sounded fancy, but the paper trails led nowhere real. Just P.O. boxes and signatures that looked suspiciously similar. The blog post that started it all was only 6 words. Where did $3.8 million go? It exploded. 200,000 views in 24 hours. Comments from people all over the country sharing their own HOA horror stories. Emma had tapped into something rotten that stretched far beyond our little cul-de-sac, and Diane, she didn't like that one bit. First came the cease and desist letters, then the poison pen emails to Emma's sponsors. When that didn't work, the threats got nastier. Anonymous letters, fake legal documents, even whispers about IRS audits. But Emma didn't scare easy. If anything, it made her dig deeper. She was getting tips from forensic accountants, calls from former investigators, even messages from people who claimed federal agencies were watching Diane. I should have seen this coming. I should have known Diane would push back harder. But God help me, I never thought she'd send someone to do this. The badge flashes in my mind again, that fake HOA Compliance Division seal, lying there on my kitchen floor like some sick joke. That wasn't just a message, that was a declaration of war. And that's when I knew. The law wasn't going to help us. Not fast enough. Not when Diane had money, lawyers, and God knows what else in her pocket. If Emma was going to be safe, if justice was ever going to happen, I needed help of a different kind. Help that didn't care about HOA bylaws or courtroom decorum. Help that understood one thing and one thing only. You don't hurt family and walk away. So I pulled out my phone, scrolled past all the contacts until I reached the one name I hadn't called in years. When he picked up, I could hear the rumble of engines in the background. Music, laughter, then his voice, smooth as gravel and twice as hard. "Little cousin," he said. "Been a long time." "Tank," I whispered, my throat raw. "I need you." The laughter stopped. The engines went silent. And I knew in that moment, my quiet suburban life was about to end. The sound hit first. That low, bone-deep rumble that makes glass tremble in its frames and sends nervous glances darting behind curtains. It rolled through the hospital parking lot like a thunderstorm made of steel and gasoline. I knew that sound. God help me. I knew it from summers spent hanging around garages that smelled like oil and rebellion. From nights I swore I'd never revisit, not after I chose the quiet life. Harleys. A dozen of them. Maybe more. When those chrome beasts turned. Into the lot, every head in the ER waiting room jerked toward the windows. Nurses froze mid-step. Parents pulled their kids closer. That sound doesn't ask for attention. It owns it. Then I saw him, Tommy Tank Rodriguez, 6'4", 250 of muscle and menace wrapped in leather that looked like it had been through wars. His boots hit the tile floor with the weight of someone who didn't just walk. He conquered every inch he stepped on, and the way people moved out of his path without him saying a word. Yeah, that's power. The kind you don't buy with money, or earn with titles. That's power carved from years of blood, loyalty, and a reputation no sane man wants to test. Behind him came the others, the Iron Wolves. A wall of inked arms, beards, and mirrored shades, their cuts stitched with patches that told stories in code. Never forgive, never forget. For a moment, I wondered if I'd made a mistake, bringing this into Emma's world. But then, Tank saw her, saw what they did to her, and something changed in his face. The easy grin vanished. His jaw set like stone. Who? His voice was low, too calm. Like a man asking a question he already knew the answer to, just for the satisfaction of hearing it confirmed. I handed him the badge, that fake little piece of plastic that turned my home into a crime scene. Tank turned it over in his hands, eyes narrowing as he traced the cheap embossing with his thumb. Not even good work, he muttered. Then he looked up, and when his eyes locked on mine, I felt that old childhood shift. The one where Tank stopped being your cousin and became something closer to a force of nature. They came into your house, he said slowly. Laid hands on your wife. And left this trash behind. His voice hardened. That's not just disrespect, that's war. He turned, scanning the room. And that's when I saw Rico. You wouldn't peg him for an iron wolf at first glance. No beard, no scars, clean cut, quiet, and carrying a laptop bag instead of a chain. He nodded once in my direction, then set up his gear like a man on a mission. Rico. Blade, Tank said, clapping a heavy hand on the kid's shoulder. Best damn cyber bloodhound this side of the FBI. Used to run analytics for the feds before politics got him burned. Rico didn't look up. His fingers were already flying. Across the keyboard, screens reflecting in his sharp brown eyes. Give me every camera feed in this place, he said flatly, plugging into the hospital network like he owned it. Within minutes, he had them. Crystal clear footage of the man who shattered my wife's life. Max Steele, Rico murmured, almost to himself. Former military contractor, private enforcement gigs, likes cash, cryptocurrency, and leaving no witnesses. He glanced up, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. Guess he slipped. I stared at the screen, at the man who'd walked into my home like he had the right. Broad shoulders, shaved head, jaw like a brick. He looked so normal it made me sick. Just another guy you'd pass at the hardware store without a second glance, until you noticed the eyes, cold, calculating, the kind that measure bone strength before they break you. He's not freelance, Tank said, voice like gravel under. Tires. This kind of op? Somebody with serious cash hired him. Rico tapped a few keys and numbers began dancing across the screen. Crypto wallets, transaction trails, things that looked like gibberish to me but made Rico's grin sharpen. Found it, he said. Payment of 25 grand, split across 3 wallets. Traced back to... He paused, then whistled low. Diane Blackwood. The name hit. Me like a gut punch, even though I'd half expected it Diane, the queen of clipped smiles and manicured perfection. The woman who turned HOA meetings into royal courts where she reigned supreme. My fists clenched. She did this? She ordered it, Rico corrected. And this isn't her first rodeo. He spun the screen toward us, pulling up files faster than I could process. Names, dates, payouts, each one linked to disappearances, accidents, journalists who got too curious, residents who wouldn't shut up, and then Kevin Walsh, the journalist, the one who vanished 18 months ago chasing an HOA corruption lead. Rico pulled his last article draft from some digital graveyard and slid it across the screen like a ghost, coming back to tell its story. HOA corruption, the suburban money laundering machine. The room went cold. She didn't just steal, Tank said softly, eyes hard as flint. She killed. I sank into a chair because my legs didn't feel like they could hold me anymore. Emma had been inches from ending up like Kevin. Buried under Diane's rose garden with nothing but a whisper left behind. Tank crouched in front of me, his voice dropping low. You listened to me, Dave. You called us because the law can't touch this, and you were right. Diane Blackwood doesn't just break rules, she erases people. If we don't shut her down, your wife stays a target. Forever. My throat felt like sandpaper. What do we do? Tank stood, his shadow stretching long under the harsh hospital lights. And for the first time in hours, I saw something that almost felt like hope. Dark, dangerous hope, but hope all the same. "We hunt," he said simply. "Iron Wolves style." And just like that, the hospital became a war room. Rico mapped Diane's financial empire across 3 states. Tank called in more wolves, their voices low and lethal over the speakerphone. Plans formed like storm clouds gathering over a dead calm sea. They weren't talking about violence, not yet. They were talking pressure, presence, making Diane feel the walls closing in before we ever touched a hair on her head. And me? I just sat there, listening to the growl of engines outside, feeling the weight of something bigger than vengeance settling on my shoulders. Because this wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about Kevin Walsh, about every family bled dry by HOA wolves in designer suits. About a system that let someone like Diane play God with people's lives. Tank slapped a fresh clip into his Glock, not because he planned to use it tonight, but because the sound made a statement. Then he looked at me, eyes sharp as broken glass. "You ready for this, little cousin?" I thought of Emma in that hospital bed, her arm twisted, her spirit unbroken. I thought of Diane's smirk at those board meetings, like we were all pieces on her private chessboard, and I said the only thing a man can say when the line's already been crossed. "Whatever it takes," Tank grinned, a wolf's grin. "That's what I wanted to hear." He turned toward the doors, his boots echoing like a drumbeat of war. "Mount up, boys," he called. "We've got a queen to topple." The rumble started again as the wolves fired up their engines. Louder this time, like thunder promising rain. And when those bikes roared into the night, I knew Diane Blackwood had just made the biggest mistake of her life, because you don't come after family. Not mine, not Tank's, not the Iron Wolves, and by the time we were done, the whole damn world was going to know it. It started with 2 bikes. They weren't loud. Not at first. Just a low hum in the distance as the sun sank behind manicured hedges and perfect cul-de-sacs. 2 black Harleys rolling down the main boulevard like sharks slicing through still water. They didn't stop, didn't rev. Just circled Diane Blackwood's pristine mansion once, slow enough for her to notice, before gliding away like a warning whispered in the dark. By morning, she'd see them again, different riders, same jackets. That wolf patch stitched in black and silver, jaws open, teeth bared. The HOA president who used to smile like a queen now twitched every time an engine roared. And the beauty of it? The wolves weren't breaking a single law. Tank made that clear from the jump. "We don't touch her," he said, voice cold as steel. "Not yet. We make her feel it. Every breath, every shadow, until she tears herself apart. And God, it worked." Day 1, Diane called a board meeting, tried to project calm, but the cracks showed. Her hair was perfect, makeup flawless, but her hands? They couldn't stop moving. Straightening papers that didn't need straightening. "Certain undesirable elements have been seen loitering in the neighborhood," she said, her voice tight as a violin string. "Please remain vigilant. We must protect the image of our community." I sat in the back of that meeting, fists in my lap, watching her squirm. Watching the queen realize her crown wasn't worth a damn thing outside these walls. Neighbors glanced at one another, murmuring. They weren't used to seeing Diane like this. She was supposed to be untouchable, the standard everyone else measured against. Now, she looked like a woman balancing on a cliff edge, staring down into her own grave. And that was just the beginning. By day 3, the wolves had a rotation going. At least 2 bikes parked within sight of Diane's front gate at all times. Not blocking traffic, not revving engines, just there. Leather-clad statues with mirrored shades and folded arms. When she drove to the country club, they followed at a distance. When she picked up groceries, they leaned against their bikes by the exit, silent as sentinels. People noticed. They always do. Whispers spread faster than wildfire in a neighborhood like ours. Suddenly, Diane wasn't the elegant widow everyone admired. She was the woman being shadowed by bikers who looked like they ate fear for breakfast. And Diane? She unraveled. Tank called it before it happened. Women like her, he said, flicking ash from his cigarette. They build their whole world on control. Take that away and they break themselves before you ever lift a hand. He wasn't wrong. The first sign came when Rico hacked her smart home system. It wasn't hard. Manufacturers leave back doors wide open for maintenance updates. And once Rico was in, game over. 3 a.m., Diane's lights flickered like a heartbeat. Her smart speaker whispered Kevin Walsh's voice, clipped from old recordings Rico dug out of the cloud. Where did the money go, Diane? Her TV turned on by itself, playing true crime documentaries about missing journalists. Paranoia doesn't announce itself. It seeps in, one drip at a time. And soon, Diane was drowning. She hired security guards, installed extra cameras. But nothing. Stop the wolves. Because you can't fence out fear. I watched from my living room window as Emma, still in her sling, still fierce as hell, looked out at the street where 2 Harleys idled under the streetlight. You think this will work? She asked quietly. I nodded, though part of me wondered if we'd already crossed a line there was no coming back from. Emma didn't blink, didn't flinch, just whispered, Good. Day 5, Diane skipped her charity brunch. Day 6, she canceled. An HOA meeting for the first time in 5 years. Day 7, she called the cops. And the cops? They shrugged. They're not breaking the law, ma'am, the officer said, his tone somewhere between bored and amused. Public street, free country. That's when Diane snapped. The neighborhood grapevine lit up like Christmas. People whispering about how she stormed into the grocery store, screaming at a cashier because they didn't double-bag her organic kale, how she fired her landscaper for leaving messages in the mulch. Tank grinned when he heard that one. Classic unravel, he said. Won't be long now. But Diane wasn't stupid. Desperate, yes. Cornered, absolutely. But not stupid. That's what made what happened next so dangerous. Rico was monitoring everything, emails, burner phones, encrypted apps, and that's when he caught it. A message. Short, sharp. To one name we all prayed we wouldn't see again. Max. My blood ran cold when Rico said it. Meet me at the garden, the text read. Midnight. The garden. That Memorial Rose garden Diane spent millions on. The one Emma exposed in her blog as the biggest financial black hole in HOA history. Why the hell would she meet him there? I asked. Rico didn't look up from his screen. Because there's something in that garden she can't let anyone find. Tank's jaw tightened. And I'm guessing it's not fertilizer. The room went silent. Emma's eyes met mine. Pain, fear, and something harder than both burned in those green depths. You think she killed him there? Emma whispered. Kevin Walsh, the journalist who vanished 18 months ago. I didn't want to answer. Didn't want to speak that truth into existence. But deep down, I already knew. Tank stood, his voice calm and final. Midnight, boys. The garden. Time to dig up Diane's dirty little secret. Midnight in suburbia feels different when you know a body might be under the roses. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of flowers Diane paid millions for. Moonlight silvered the petals, casting long, broken shadows across the neat brick pathways. It should have felt peaceful, a manicured monument to community harmony. Instead, it felt like a graveyard, because maybe it was. I crouched behind a hedge, my heart pounding so loud I swore Diane would hear it before she ever saw us. Across the garden, Tank and 2 wolves blended into the darkness, leather melting, into shadow. Rico sat cross-legged by a memorial plaque, laptop glowing faint blue against his face. Wires snaked from the machine into a black box he'd planted earlier. Some kind of signal interceptor. His fingers danced without hesitation. "Audio's live. Visual in 60, he whispered. His voice was steady, like this was just another job. Maybe for him, it was. For me? It was something else entirely, because 20 feet away under those roses lay the answer to a question nobody wanted to ask out loud. What happened to Kevin Walsh? Tank slid up beside me like a ghost, his presence, heavy without making a sound. He crouched, eyes scanning the entrance where Diane would come through. "You good?" he murmured. I nodded, lied, because nothing about this was good. "You stay behind me," he said, not looking at me. "No cowboy crap. You're here to see it through, not get dead." I wanted to argue. But when Tank gives an order in that voice, the one that's carried him through raids and bar fights and God knows what else, you don't argue. The low rumble came first. Not bikes this time. An engine too smooth, too polished. Headlights swept across the garden gates, and a black Escalade rolled in slow, like it was trying not to be noticed. But everything about it screamed money and panic. The SUV stopped. The driver's door opened, and Max Steele stepped out. Even in the moonlight, he looked like a man carved for one purpose: damage, tactical boots, black jacket. That same cold detachment in his eyes, like breaking people, was just another line item on his to-do list. He scanned the garden once, hand brushing the edge of his jacket where I knew a weapon sat waiting. Then he opened the rear door. Diane emerged. If I hadn't hated her guts, I might have pitied her. She wasn't the queen of perfection tonight. Her designer coat hung loose, hair frizzed from humidity, makeup smudged like she'd been crying, which, judging from the puffiness around her eyes, she had. Still, there was steel in her spine. Desperation, too. But desperation makes people dangerous. She clutched a duffel bag in both hands like it held her last shred of control. And maybe it did. "Over here," Max said, voice low. He led her toward the center of the garden, the spot Rico had flagged as anomaly detected. Tank's whisper ghosted against my ear. Places. The wolves shifted like shadows, closing in without. A sound. My pulse jackhammered. I could taste metal in my mouth. Rico's voice murmured in the earpiece Tank had shoved at me earlier. "Video live, streaming to 5 redundant servers. If they sneeze, I'll have it in 4K. Diane knelt by a bed of perfect white roses. She set the duffel down, unzipped it, and pulled out a shovel. A shovel, for God's sake. The queen of cul-de-sac. Luxury, digging dirt in the dead of night like a grave robber. Max stood over her, scanning the shadows. "You sure about this?" he muttered. "They're closing in," Diane hissed, jamming the blade into the soil. "Those bikers, they know. I can feel them watching." She wasn't wrong. Dirt crumbled under her manicured nails as she dug faster, more frantic with every motion. Sweat glistened on her forehead, catching the moonlight like broken glass. And then she froze. The shovel hit something solid. Even from here, I heard that hollow thud. Diane dropped to her knees, clawing at the dirt until it gave way to wood. A box. Long, narrow, weathered by time and soil, my stomach flipped. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh." "Keep it together," Max snapped, crouching beside her. He brushed more dirt away with practiced efficiency, like a man who'd done this before. "Do you know what happens if they find this?" Diane's voice cracked, high and brittle. "Everything. I've worked for everything. Gone." Max didn't answer. He didn't have to, because I already knew. And so did Tank, Kevin Walsh. It had to be, the journalist who vanished after writing one article too many. The man who chased truth into the dark and never came back. And now, Diane was about to drag his ghost into the moonlight. Tank's fingers. brushed my arm. A signal. Not yet. I clenched my fists so hard my nails bit into my palms. Every instinct screamed to move, to end this. But Tank was right. We needed her to talk first. To damn herself beyond any salvation, and she did, because panic makes people sloppy. I told you to make it clean, Diane spat at Max, her voice shaking. No mess, no noise, no witnesses. Walsh didn't scare easy, Max cut in, his tone flat as a blade. Neither does your blogger friend, from what I hear. Emma. Hearing her name in his mouth was like a spark in dry timber. Fire roared up inside me, hot and hungry. Tank's hand on my shoulder was the only thing keeping. Me rooted! Just move him! Diane snapped, jabbing a finger at the half-uncovered box. Somewhere safe. Before they... She froze. Not because of us. Not yet. Because her burner phone buzzed in her pocket. Loud in the silence like a gunshot. She fumbled it out, answered with a hiss. What? No, I told you. What do you mean? They're outside? Her eyes darted to the gate. Wild. Animal. Tank's whisper slid into my ear, low and lethal. She brought backup. My pulse spiked. Backup? Who the hell? Headlights cut across the far edge of the garden. Another vehicle creeping in, tires crunching gravel. Then another. 2 black SUVs, no plates. Windows tinted midnight. Max swore under his breath, his hand sliding inside his jacket. Diane's breath hitched like a rabbit sensing the fox too late. What? Now? She whispered, voice quivering. Max looked at her, expression flat and merciless. Now? We find out if your money bought enough muscle. And in that frozen second, moonlight glinting off steel, headlights slicing through shadows, I realized the wolves weren't the only predators circling Diane Blackwood tonight. Whatever was buried under those roses wasn't the only secret ready to surface. And this suburban nightmare? It was about to explode. Headlights turned the roses into blood. Gravel crunched under heavy tires as the first SUV rolled to a stop. Another pulled in behind it, sealing the gate like a pair of black fangs biting down. Engines idled. Doors opened. Men spilled out. 6, maybe 7. All dressed the same. Black tactical gear, earpieces glinting under the moon. They moved like men who'd done this before. Like men who weren't afraid of breaking bones or spilling blood if the money was right. Diane staggered to her feet, panic sharpening her voice. What took you so long? She hissed, clutching the shovel like it could save her. Traffic, one of them said flatly. No humor in his tone, just business. He scanned the garden, his gaze lingering on the half-exposed. Box in the dirt, what's this? Nothing you need to worry about, Diane snapped. But her voice cracked, and cracks have a way of spreading. The man smirked. Lady, you called us for cleanup. Looks like you've got a lot of mess. Max shifted his weight, his hand brushing the inside of his jacket again. And for the first time, I saw something like calculation flicker across his face. Not fear. Not yet. But awareness. He wasn't the biggest predator here anymore. Stay cool, Tank whispered in my ear. His silhouette moved like a shadow slipping, from one hedge to another. Wolves adjusting their positions, tightening the circle. Rico, Tank murmured. On it, came the soft reply. Somewhere in the dark, keys clacked, cameras whirred. And then, screens lit up in SUVs like ghosts in the machine, their own dash cams hijacked, every man in black now starring in a live broadcast they didn't even know existed. Insurance, Rico called it. Leverage, Tank called it. Salvation, I prayed it would be. Diane didn't notice any of it. She was too busy spiraling. You move him now, she snapped at Max, jabbing a shaking finger toward the box. Before they... She stopped herself. Too late. The man from the SUV followed her gaze. Then he laughed, a low, ugly sound that didn't belong in this quiet garden. Well, well, Guess the rumors were true. He stepped closer, boot crunching. On soil. Kevin Walsh. I heard he got mouthy, every muscle in my body locked. Hearing that name, hearing it like a punchline, made my vision blur red. Tank's hand brushed my shoulder again, grounding me. Not yet. Max didn't move, didn't answer. But something passed over his face, a flicker of annoyance? No. Something colder. Like a man realizing the game just changed and he's sitting on the wrong team. Diane's voice pitched higher, brittle as glass. Don't say his name, just get him out of here. But they didn't move. Not until the leader tilted his head, that smirk widening. Price just doubled. Diane blinked. What? You heard me. You want us digging up bodies and hauling them across state lines? That's heat I don't need for pocket change. He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing hers. So you pay? Or we walk, and maybe talk? Her breath hitched. You can't do this to me. Oh, sweetheart, he said softly, almost kindly. We can do whatever the hell we want. The silence that followed was heavy enough to break bones. Diane stared up at him, her perfect suburban world crumbling under boots that didn't care about HOA bylaws or charity luncheons. And then Max moved, slow, controlled, like a man sliding his last chess piece across the board. His gun was in his hand before anyone saw it. The Merc leader froze. His men stiffened, hands hovering near their holsters. Easy, Max said, voice calm as midnight. She's already paid me to handle this. Paid you, the man echoed, tone curling with disdain. Cute, but this is grown-up business. Now. Max's eyes flicked to Diane, then back to the man. Walk away. For a second, nobody breathed. Then, laughter. Harsh, sharp, cutting through the night like broken glass. You got balls, old man, the leader said, but you're outnumbered. You pull that trigger, you don't live to reload. Max didn't blink, didn't flinch. You're assuming I need to reload. That was when Tank stepped out of the dark, and God help me, I've never been so relieved to see 6'4" and leather in my life. The wolves emerged behind him, shadows solidifying into men, 12 of them, silent, unsmiling. The moon catching the glint of steel tucked into belts and boots. The mercs turned, startled. They hadn't clocked us at all, which meant Rico had done his job. Cameras blind, comms scrambled. These guys were deaf, dumb, and surrounded. Tank's voice rolled across the garden like distant thunder. You boys look lost, the leaders. Bravado wavered, just a flicker, but I saw it. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 12. 12 men who didn't look like weekend warriors. Men who looked like they'd bleed before they broke. This ain't your fight, the leader said. But his tone lacked heat now. Tank's grin was slow, wolfish. Lady hires fake cops to break a woman's arm, tries to bury a journalist in a flower bed and then calls you to clean it up. Sounds like my fight to me. Diane's head snapped toward him, eyes wide. You... Shut up, Tank said, calm, deadly. Grown folks are talking. Her mouth opened, then closed. For once in her life, Diane Blackwood had no script. Max lowered his gun a fraction. His gaze met Tank's. Something passed between them, something I couldn't read but felt in my bones. You want her breathing? Max asked softly. Tank tilted his head. For now. And that was it. The pivot. The moment Max Steele, mercenary for hire, realized which side offered him something Diane never could. Survival, because Tank didn't need to threaten, didn't need to promise. The wolves spoke a language Max understood just fine, loyalty and inevitability. He holstered his gun, stepped back, and in that tiny motion the whole balance shifted. The mercs saw it too. They weren't stupid. They read the room, and the room said, walk away or get buried where you stand. The leader swallowed, hard. This ain't worth the heat. He jerked his chin at his men. We're out. One by one, they backed off. Eyes hard, but hands empty. Doors slammed. Engines roared, and then the SUVs were gone, taillights bleeding red into the night. Silence. Thick, electric. Tank moved first, closing the distance to Diane with slow, deliberate steps. She stumbled back, tripping over the half-dug earth. "Where you going, princess?" Tank asked softly. "We're just getting started." Her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. You don't understand." "Oh, I understand plenty." He crouched low, eyes level with hers. "But you're gonna help me understand more. Starting with what's in the box." Her gaze darted to the roses, to the dirt, to the coffin-shaped shadow waiting under the soil like a secret screaming to be told. "No," she whispered. "You can't." Tank's hand shot out, gripping, her chin with just enough force to still her trembling. His voice dropped to a whisper colder than steel. "Truth has a way of surfacing, Diane, even when you bury it under flowers." And then Rico's voice cut in through the earpiece. Calm, clinical, deadly certain. "Tank, you're gonna want to see this." On his laptop screen, the live feed from Diane's intercepted burner call flickered back, her last whisper before. The SUVs rolled up. "If we can't move him tonight, then we'll have to make sure those bikers never get a chance to talk about what they think they know." She wasn't just cleaning up old messes, she was planning new ones, and the night was far from over. Max Steele wasn't smiling. He sat at the picnic table in the Wolves' safe house, his hands flat on the scarred wood. No cuffs, no ropes. He didn't need them, not with Tank standing across from him like a storm in human form. The room smelled of oil and leather, the low hum of bikes idling outside a constant reminder that the wolves didn't vanish when the fight was done. They circled. They waited. They protected. "You've got one chance," Tank said, his voice calm as death. "Use it." Max's jaw flexed. His eyes weren't scared, but they weren't defiant either. They were calculating, measuring angles, the way a man does when survival sits on one side of the scale and pride on the other. Finally, he spoke. "She's worse than you think." The words landed heavy, like a brick through glass. I leaned in, every muscle tense. Emma sat beside me, her sling resting across her lap, her good hand clenched so tight the knuckles shone white. "Explain," Tank said. Max exhaled slow, like poison leaving his lungs. "You think she just skimmed off the top? Cute little embezzlement? Scheme for landscaping money?" He shook his head, a humorless smile tugging his mouth. "She built a network, shell companies, kickbacks, pay-to-play contracts across 5 states. HOA boards are her personal ATM. Rico didn't even look up from his laptop. His fingers were already moving. Pulling threads, Max was dropping into a digital map that sprawled across the screen like a spiderweb from hell. "How deep?" Tank asked. Max's laugh was short, harsh. "You could swim in it and never find the bottom." Emma's voice was steady, but I heard the steel under the strain. "And Kevin Walsh?" Max met her eyes. No flinch, no apology, just cold truth. He got close, closer than anyone. Started poking at Meadowbrook accounts. She panicked. Called me. His voice dropped, a rasp that felt like gravel scraping bone. Told me to make sure he never published again. Emma sucked in a breath. Her jaw trembled, but her gaze never broke. "And you—" "I didn't pull the trigger," Max cut in, sharp as broken glass. "That was her. He confronted her. She panicked, called me after, told me where to bury him." The silence that followed felt like it could crush bone. Emma's breath hitched, just once. Then she straightened her spine like a soldier bracing for impact. "Did you record it?" Tank asked, his voice like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Max's eyes flicked to him, then to Rico, then back. Always. He reached into his jacket slow, careful, and laid a slim black drive on the table like an offering. Rico snatched it, plugged it in. The speakers crackled, then filled the room with Diane's voice. I had to do it. He was going to ruin everything. Years of work. Gone. And now that blogger is asking the same damn questions. Emma's lips parted. A strangled sound caught in her throat. I reached for her hand, felt it shaking like a live wire under my palm. The recording kept going, worse with every word. Diane detailing payouts, explaining how she'd funneled HOA dues into shell companies, how anyone who got cute with questions disappeared. And then, the part that made my blood run ice. If we can't move him tonight, then we make sure those bikers never get the chance to talk. She wasn't bluffing. She'd tried. Tonight. Tanks. Expression didn't change, but something in the air did. The kind of shift animals feel before lightning strikes. She dies tonight, one of the wolves growled from the shadows. No! Tank snapped, sharp as a whip. Not yet. His eyes slid to Emma. She deserves worse than a bullet. Emma stared at him, her face pale, but her voice like iron. I want her broken, not just beaten. Broken where everyone can see what she really is. Tank's grin was slow, dangerous. Then we make her confess. Rico looked up, a glint in his eye. I can make that happen. What's the plan? I asked, my voice rough. Rico spun the laptop toward us, the map of Diane's empire glowing like a cancer on the screen. She's circling the drain. Every account I've touched shows panic moves, liquidating assets, wiring cash offshore. She's burning bridges and running scared. We don't have to drag her into the light. We make her walk there herself. Emma leaned in, eyes sharp. How? Pressure, Rico said simply. The same thing she tried to use on you, but louder, dirtier, and live. Tank chuckled low. Oh, I like where this is going. Rico's fingers flew. Screens blinked. Feeds popped up. Diane pacing her marble kitchen, 2 empty wine bottles on the counter. Her hair wild, her phone clutched like a lifeline. Been watching her all night, Rico said. Calls to burner numbers, panic messages to her lawyer, and... He tapped a key. Diane's voice spilled out, trembling, frantic. We move him. Tomorrow. Before they find out. I don't care what it costs. Move him? I repeated. My stomach churned. The body, Emma said softly, her face carved from stone. Rico nodded. She's still trying to clean the slate. That means she'll come back to the garden. And when she does, we'll be waiting, Tank finished. But this time, it wouldn't be in the shadows. We make her talk, Emma said, her voice steady now, hard. Every crime, every secret, in front of the world. Rico grinned, feral. Live stream. Tank slapped the table, the sound cracking, like a gunshot. Boys, he said, standing to his full, terrifying height. Gear up. We've got a queen to dethrone. The wolves moved like a single organism, leather and steel and grim purpose. Guns checked, blades sheathed, engines revving outside like thunder warming up for the storm. Emma stood too, shaky but unbroken. Her eyes burned like green fire in the dim light. You're not going, I said. The hell I'm not, she shot back. She tried to silence me. She broke my body. Now, I'm going to watch her choke on the truth, I wanted to argue. God, I wanted to wrap her in steel and lock her away from this darkness. But when I looked at her, at the woman who stared down prosecutors, who took on empires with nothing but words, I knew better. This wasn't vengeance for Emma. This was justice. And Diane Blackwood was about to learn what happens when you try to bury the truth. Because the truth, it digs itself out. The moon turned the roses white like bones. It was close to midnight again when the garden came alive with shadows. The kind of stillness that hums before a storm pressed down on the world, heavy and sharp. The wolves moved like wraiths, melting, into hedges and behind marble plaques. Tank crouched low behind a bronze angel, his eyes glowing faint in the pale light. Beside him, I felt my pulse pounding in my ears like war drums. Rico sat cross-legged under a trellis, laptop glowing blue against his face. Wires fed into cameras hidden in lantern posts, in shrubs, in places Diane would never see. His voice was calm in the comms. Streams live, 50,000 viewers and climbing. Chat's already on fire. Emma was next to him, her sling secure, her jaw clenched. A blanket draped over her shoulders against the chill, but nothing could soften the fire in her eyes. She wasn't trembling anymore. She was stone. Tank's voice crackled low in my earpiece. Positions. Engines rumbled once in the distance, just enough for Diane to hear them without seeing where they came from. Wolves' way of whispering in the dark. We're here. Headlights swept across the gate. A black sedan slid inside, tires whispering over gravel. It stopped by the fountain at the garden's heart. And there she was. Diane Blackwood. She stepped out slow, her face a mask of powder and cracks. Her hair was wild, despite the designer coat, her heels sinking into the earth like she didn't belong here anymore. She clutched a burner phone in one hand, a duffel in the other. Her head jerked side to side, scanning the shadows. Paranoia poured, off her like perfume gone sour. She looks wrecked, Rico murmured. She's dangerous, Emma shot back, voice low but lethal. Diane moved toward the rose bed, the same one she'd clawed open nights ago. Only now, cameras caught every twitch, every whisper, every crack in the porcelain doll she used to be. Rico leaned close to his mic. Feeding audio. Now! Her voice bled through the stream, sharp and shaking. Where are you? She hissed into the phone. You said you'd be here. We have to move him tonight, before they... She stopped, froze, because Max stepped. Out from behind a marble pillar like a ghost dragged from her worst nightmare. Diane's breath hitched. You... Evening, Max said, his voice flat as a blade. I told you not to. You told me a lot of things, he cut in. His eyes slid toward the roses, then back to her. Funny thing about secrets. They don't stay buried. Her fingers tightened on the phone. This isn't what you think. It's exactly what I think, Max said, and then he tapped the earpiece barely visible in his right ear. And what 50,000 people think, too. Her face drained of color. What? Rico hit a key, and her own voice spilled from hidden speakers planted among the hedges. I had to do it. He was going to ruin everything. Diane spun, wild-eyed, the sound chasing her like a ghost she couldn't outrun. And now that blogger is asking the same damn questions. Emma stepped out of the dark then, slow and deliberate. Her sling caught the moonlight. Her green eyes burned. You mean me? She said, voice like broken glass and fire. Diane froze. The shovel slipped from her hands. You broke my arm, Emma said softly. You tried to break me, but you forgot something. She took one step closer, her breath fogging in the cold. Truth doesn't break. Diane shook her head, backing away. You don't understand. Oh, I understand, Emma cut in, sharp as a knife. I understand you killed Kevin Walsh. I understand you stole millions from families who trusted you. And I understand every word is being streamed live to the world right now. The color bled from Diane's face. Her lips trembled. No. Yes, Rico said from the shadows, his voice echoing through hidden speakers like a ghost in her machine. Say hi to America, Diane. They've been dying to meet you. The chat feed on Rico's screen exploded. OMG confession. She's done. Call the cops now. Diane's composure shattered. She clawed at her coat, her hair, her throat, like she could peel the truth off her skin. You don't get it, she screamed. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted blood on my hands. He made me. Her voice broke on a sob. Kevin, he wouldn't stop. He had proof. He was going to ruin everything I built. Everything. So yes, I killed him. I buried him here. Her voice echoed through the garden, carried by speakers and streamed to tens of thousands of strangers. The truth ripping out of her. Like rot finally spilling from a wound, Emma's breath hitched, but her eyes stayed cold. Why? She whispered. Diane sobbed, mascara streaking her cheeks. Because power doesn't come from truth. It comes from fear, and I couldn't lose it, not after everything. Tank stepped out then, his shadow swallowing hers. His voice was quiet, but it hit like a hammer. You just did. Diane's head whipped toward him, and that's when I saw it. The glint. From her bag. The pistol came up fast. Too fast for me to shout. Too fast for Emma to move. No! I roared. The shot cracked like lightning. Emma gasped, and the world shattered. The gunshot tore the night apart. Emma's gasp ripped through me like a blade, my heart seizing in my chest as she stumbled backward. For half a second, the world slowed. Diane's face twisted with rage, the pistol smoking in her grip. Emma's, blanket fluttering to the ground like a broken wing, and then movement. Tank hit Diane like a freight train. The pistol flew from her hand, skittering across the dirt as his arm locked around her throat. She clawed, thrashed, screamed. But Tank was a storm in leather and scars, and storms don't lose fights to porcelain dolls. Two wolves surged forward, pinning Diane to the ground with zip ties biting into her wrists. She kicked, sobbed, cursed, but the game was over, and she knew it. Emma staggered against me, my arms catching her before she hit the ground. I scanned her frantically, my hands shaking as I checked for blood, for wounds. Anything. Dave, she whispered. I looked down and saw it. The bullet hole in the blanket. Not her. Not her. I crushed her to me, breath breaking out in a sound that was half sob, half prayer. You're okay? I rasped, my voice raw. You're okay? She clung to me, trembling, her good hand gripping my jacket like a lifeline. And then she looked past me. To Diane. The woman who tried to kill her now lay face down in the dirt, her mascara bleeding into the soil like poison leaching from the earth. Tank. Crouched, his voice a low growl in her ear. You just confessed to murder on a live stream with 100,000 viewers. You tried to kill my family on camera, and you pulled a gun in front of witnesses. He leaned close, his breath hot against her cheek. Game over, princess. Diane, sobbed, her voice cracking like glass under boots. You don't understand. I had to protect everything. Tank straightened slowly, towering over her like judgment-made flesh. You didn't protect anything. You buried yourself. Rico's voice cut in, calm and sharp as steel. Stream peaked at 182,000. Every word archived. On redundant servers. Local PD en route, ETA 4 minutes? Good, Tank said, his tone final. Let him take out the trash. The wolves melted back into the shadows, engines rumbling like distant thunder. They'd done their job. Now it was time for the law to finish what justice had started. I held Emma close as blue and red lights strobed across the garden. Officers swarmed, their radios crackling, their faces stunned as they took in the scene. Diane Blackwood, queen of the HOA, zip-tied in the dirt like a common criminal, her perfect world bleeding out under rose bushes that hid more than roots. They read. Her rights. She barely heard them. Her eyes were vacant now, hollow windows in a mansion burned to ash. As they dragged her past Emma, something flickered in those empty eyes. Regret? Hate? I'll never know. You tried to silence me, Emma said softly, her voice steady now, carved from fire and iron. But you just made me louder. Diane opened her mouth, maybe to beg, maybe to curse. but the words died in her throat. The cuffs clicked shut, and that was the last time I ever saw her free. The garden was chaos. Cops stringing tape, reporters swarming like vultures, neighbors whispering in stunned disbelief. But all I saw was Emma, standing in the moonlight. Sling on her arm, shoulders straight, her breath fogging in the cold, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not big, not bright, just enough to tell me she was still here, still her. I pulled her close, my voice low against her hair. It's over, but we both knew it wasn't, not really, not yet, because the next weeks were a storm. The trial was a media circus. Every major network ran the story. Suburban HOA queen exposed as murderer in viral live stream. Diane sat shackled in orange, her lawyers sweating bullets while Rico's footage rolled on giant screens. Her confession hit like a hammer. The recordings Max handed over drove the nails. And when they dug under the roses and found Kevin Walsh's remains, that was the coffin slammed shut. The jury didn't deliberate long. Life without parole for premeditated murder. Add decades for conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement. $8 million in restitution to every family she bled dry. I was there when they read the verdict. Emma sat beside me, her hand warm in mine. When the judge said, "life," she exhaled slow, like a woman finally letting go of a weight that's been crushing her chest for months. Max testified too. His deal bought him immunity, but his voice didn't waver once. He told the truth cold and clean, like a man who'd made peace with his sins, or at least chosen which ones to carry. And Tank? He didn't testify. Didn't need to. The wolves don't chase headlines, they chase balance, and balance had been restored. The night after sentencing, we went back to the garden, not as a crime scene, not as a battlefield, as a memorial. The plaque gleamed under the setting sun. Kevin Walsh Truth Garden, because truth always surfaces. Emma laid white roses at its base, her sling gone now, her strength carved deeper than scars. Her voice carried, soft in the breeze. Kevin died trying to tell the truth. Diane thought she could bury it, but truth doesn't stay buried. She looked at me then, her eyes bright with unshed tears. It grows. I slipped an arm around her waist, holding her against me as neighbors gathered, faces familiar, voices hushed. They weren't whispering scandal anymore. They were whispering respect, because Emma didn't just win a fight. She started a movement. Her blog became a crusade. Her words a war cry for every family crushed under HOA corruption. Within months, she was on every talk show, her book climbing the bestseller lists, her foundation funding legal battles in neighborhoods across America. The woman they tried to silence became a voice they couldn't ignore. And me? I went back, to work. Only now my job wasn't just blueprints and beams. It was spotting the cracks in systems built to fail good people. Turns out there's plenty of work for a man who knows how to smell rot before it spreads. As for the wolves, they rolled on. Still leather, still chrome. But now they weren't just a club. They were guardians. Unofficial, maybe, but real as the steel they rode. Tank called it community service with bite. Rico launched a cybersecurity firm that now audits HOA boards for fraud. Funny how a hacker in a leather cut became the guy neighborhoods call when they want to keep their books clean. And Diane? She rots in federal prison, watching a Netflix documentary about her own downfall. According to Emma's sources, she still tells anyone who'll listen that she was just protecting the community. Maybe in her twisted mind, that's true. But here's what I know. The night she tried to bury Kevin Walsh, she planted something else instead. A seed, and that seed grew into roots that cracked her empire wide open. That's the thing about truth. You can cover it with dirt. You can water it with lies. You can try to starve it of light. But one day, when you least expect it, it blooms. And when it does, it's stronger than anything you tried to kill. So remember this. When you attack someone's family, you don't just make enemies, you make legends, and legends never break.